Hey guys, Susan Thomas here, and today I'm going to teach you how to make simple wire hoops. A simple pair of hoops is essential to any wardrobe. So today I'm going to teach you how to make a pair using some techniques that I think you guys will find really easy. Now there's tons of different ways to put these together, but I'm going to show you a way that I found works for me every single time. First of all, you're going to need some supplies. You're going to need some wire, of course, and I recommend for this project either 20, 18, or 16 gauge wire, your heavier gauge wires, to make your hoops. You're also going to need some dowels or mandrels, depending on the size hoop you want to make. You can start really small if you want to make teeny tiny little hoops, or you can go a little bit bigger if you want to make a medium-sized pair of hoops, or you can go really big, make the Big Daddy hoops. Those are my favorites. Then, of course, you're going to need some tools, so don't forget the basics. You're going to want a round nose plier, a chain nose and flat nose plier, a flush cutter, and I also have some other supplies here that are optional. I have a chasing hammer to texturize if I want to, and then I also have a rawhide hammer to flatten things out, and of course, the all-purpose bench block. And then, finally, I have some patina, because I'm going to be working with some copper, and I love patina, so we're going to use some today. So to start making this smaller pair of hoops like you see here, we're going to start with some 20 gauge wire. And I've already cut some of this, and I'm just going to trim off the ends a little bit and make them about 6 inches long. So I've got two 6-inch pieces to work with. I'm just going to work with one at a time, and I am going to use my ring mandrel to shape this wire into a hoop. And the reason I like to use a ring mandrel is because they're marked with different sizes, and even though I'm not going to be making like a size 15 or 14 ring, every time I make a hoop, they'll always be the same size because I can always work right on that mark where that 15 or 14 or 13 is. It's a great way to size your hoops, and I like to make them right here on the 15. And that way I don't have to make both hoops at the same time, which is really difficult, I'm just saying. Okay, so I'm just going to wrap the 20 gauge wire around. You'll see how I kind of have it overlapped, and I have pretty much equal amounts of wire on either side of my little loop that I made. And then I'm going to take a pair of flat nose pliers, and I'm going to grab this, and I'm just going to bend that up into a 90-degree angle. See how I did that? I just bent that up into a 90-degree angle right there. So I'm holding everything really tight around the mandrel, and I'm going to take that flat nose plier again, and I'm going to bend this around the piece that's sticking straight up. Okay, so you can see how I have that kind of wrapped around the piece that I bent into a 90-degree angle, and then I'm going to take my flat nose pliers, and I'm just going to kind of squeeze in on that until I get a pretty tight loop. And then I'm going to take this piece of wire, and I'm going to continue wrapping around that piece of wire until I get it 2 times around on both sides. And I'm just turning it so I can see what I've done here. So I see I have 2 wraps right there because I don't like to make too long of a neck right there. So just 2 wraps looks really pretty. And then I'm going to trim off the extra wire with my flush cutter right here. Boom. Just like that. And then this piece, if you can see that, that's sticking straight up still from the piece. I'm just going to bend that back into a 90-degree angle. Let me take it off there, and then you can kind of see from the top what I've done. At this point, all we have left to do is make a little loop at the top. So you're going to take your flush cutter and you're going to trim this wire. I usually trim it about 3/8 of an inch long, and you can measure that if you want to. I am not a big measurer, I just kind of guess every time, but you can see I've got it about 3/8 of an inch long right there, and I'm just going to take that round nose plier, I'm going to grab right at the end, and I'm going to roll this into a loop, like so. Super easy, and then I'm just going to kind of finish it off and make it straight and closed. So I'm just opening it a little bit with my flat nose plier and then closing it back down just to make sure that's all the way closed. Okay, so then you make another one, so you have 2. And then at this point, you guys can see that this one looks like it's going to hold its shape pretty well, and that's because I used a harder wire. I used a German style wire to make these. But if you happen to use a softer wire, you might want to grab a chasing hammer and a bench block and lay that on here like this and do just a little bit of light hammering to to harden up the wire so it holds its shape. 20 gauge is not the thickest wire. It's under 1 millimeter, and you want to make sure it's going to hold its shape. You can texturize this if you're using a sterling silver or a copper, or if you're using a plated wire like I have here, you can just kind of lightly hammer that, because the metal on the metal is going to harden up your wire and help it hold its shape. And then of course, next what you're going to do is you're going to attach them to an ear wire to make it into a pair of earrings. You can dangle things from these, and you can dangle things in the middle of these. You can make a toggle doing this. There's just so many different things you can do with these little hoops. But I'm just going to show you how, at this point, if I was going to make an earring, I would just open that up, and making sure that the side that I cut is to the back, I'm just going to pop that on, and then I'm going to twist that closed like so, and then see, pretty cute, right? All right, so that's how you do it with some small wire and some 20 gauge wire if you want to do a small pair of hoops, but I like to wear really large hoops. I mean, who doesn't need a huge pair of hoops in their wardrobe, right? So I'm going to show you how to do this using just a larger dowel. It's essentially the same process, but a couple differences, and you'll have to texturize and do some different things. So let me clean up my mess and get my 20 gauge wire out of the way, and then I'm going to grab some 16 gauge wire. So this is going to be thicker wire, and I'm using bare copper because I want to be able to oxidize this in a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to cut a little bit more wire than I cut for the other piece. So I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to measure this out about 12 inches and just flush cut that end. So then this is one of my favorite tools. It's a forming block is what it is. And so you're going to take this forming block and you're going to wrap the wire around this. Now, you may not have a forming block or the dowels you need, and believe me guys, you can use anything round to do this. You might use a rolling pin if you want to. So same thing, I've just got this wrapped around, and see how you've got some wire extending from both sides, and then you're going to grab with your flat nose plier and you're just going to bend that straight up. So see how it's straight up, almost at, I guess it's a 90-degree angle. So what we're going to do now is we're going to grab the wire that's not bent with the flat nose pliers, and we're going to wrap that around. I like to take my flat nose pliers and kind of squeeze in just like this because it makes a tighter coil around this piece of wire and it looks so much better. And then you're just going to take your fingers and wrap this around. And if that's hard for you to do, you can use your plier to pull this around as well. Okay, so now that we've got that wrapped, I'm just going to grab my flush cutter and trim off the excess wire. So now I can take it off of my dowel. Oops, wait a minute, I don't like to take it off yet. But first what I want to do is bend that into a 90-degree angle, like so. So I'm going to pull that off of my forming block. And now, like I said, I want these two little wraps that I have here to be closer together. So I'm just going to take my flat nose plier and squeeze those together. And then I am going to, same as before, take my flush cutter, and I'm going to make sure to use that flush side to cut off my extra wire at about 3/8 of an inch, and then grab with my round nose plier and bring that into a loop. Now, because this is large wire, this is a little bit, like if I hold it from the top, see how it's just a little bit, I guess I'm going to call it wonky, but a little bit curved, and I want it to be straighter like this one that I did before. So I'm going to use my bench block, and first I'm just going to use the rawhide hammer just to kind of straighten that out, because sometimes you want your hoop to be just a perfect circle and you don't want any texturizing. So if you use your rawhide hammer, you're not going to get any texturizing and you're just going to get a pretty hoop. And right up here at the top, I usually like to do a little bit of dapping. This is just totally optional. It's like a decorative thing. I'm just going to hit that one time, just like that. And it also flattens everything out, but see how it kind of gave those just a little texture right there. Now at this point, you could just make another one just like that and have a pair of hoops, or you could get fancy and do what I've done here, which is texturize it and then add some patina. And to do that, you're just going to use one of your chasing hammers or a different texturizing hammer, it's whatever you want. I use the ball peen end of my hammer just to go around this and put the texture on one side of the earring. So once you get that hammered all the way around, you can put it back onto the block or whatever you've used, whatever dowel you've used to make this. And then you just want to go around it with your rawhide hammer to round it back up, like so. There you go. And then finally, the last step would be, if you so choose, to add some patina. And what you want to do then is just put your patina on a cloth and then just rub it onto your piece and then wipe it back off with some steel wool or whatever you want to. So final step, of course, is to add an ear wire. I'm just going to open that up. And once again, making sure that that cut side is to the back, I'm going to put that onto the ear wire and then close it up. Ta-da! I hope you liked learning how to make basic wire hoops. You're going to need some basic supplies and tools, including 18, 20 or 16 gauge wire, some dowels or mandrels, depending on the size hoop that you're going to want to make, and then of course your basic tools. You're going to need a round nose, a chain nose, and a flat nose plier, and your handy dandy flush cutter. And then optionally, you're also going to want to have some hammers like a rawhide hammer, a chasing hammer to texturize and harden, and a bench block to work with. And finally, if you're working with sterling silver or copper wire, you're going to want to have some patina like some liver of sulfur or some silver black or something along those lines to make it look pretty. Thanks so much for watching. If you guys would like to pick up some supplies like the ones we work with today, check out the links down below. Are there any other projects you'd like to learn about with wire? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you again next time.